interesting.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, the sound is great, and we can hear you, we can see you. I've just uploaded your presentation.
Okay, yeah,
can you see your slides? That. Yes, great. Can you change them?
Let me check. Yeah, that's all fine.
Wonderful. Okay. So it's 3 in Moscow, and I think that we can get it started. Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Julia, and hello to everyone who has joined today. It's very nice to be invited to give this webinar and to have the opportunity to speak to you all. Let me give you a little summary of what the webinar is going to consist of today. So we're going to look at projects, basically, and first we're going to look at why projects work well for building speaking and writing skills. Then we'll look at the importance of distinguishing between process and product. These are 2 concepts that you may, I'm sure, already know about. We're going to look at them in the context of projects. Then we'll have a look at how to stage a project, a kind of outline that can be used for different kinds of projects. And then I've got 3 examples of projects for you to do with your young learners. And at the end, there'll be 5 minutes for questions and answers. If you have any questions or answers, please save them until the end. Otherwise, they might get lost in the chat. And I'll try to answer them as well as I can. Okay, so first, let's look at why projects work well for building speaking and writing skills. And there are a number of reasons why they work well. But before I look at those reasons, I just want to clarify that the projects that I'm talking about today are really not individual projects for students to do by themselves, but more projects to do in pairs or possibly in groups. So where they have a partner to work with at least. Okay, so first of all, they integrate language skills, especially speaking and writing, which is the topic of today's talk. Often, in order to complete a project, students need to talk to each other. And there are various opportunities through the different stages of the project for speaking practice. But what students often need to produce, what they're working towards, is something that's written. That could be a story, it could be a poster, it might be a fact file. We're going to look at some examples of those later. But they really bring in those skills quite naturally. They're things that they would need to do anyway in their own language if they were doing these projects. So they need to do them necessarily in English too, to complete them in an English language context. They also provide lots of opportunity for language practice in all different kinds of ways, from input where they can, most of the topics will be most of the projects are based around a particular topic. It could be something to do with geography, science, it could be to do with culture. So there's often a lot of input where students can read or listen to something and then respond by talking to each other about that. And then there are opportunities for them to talk to each other about how they're going to do the project. And then throughout the process of doing the project, they'll be talking to each other as well. And then at the end, often they'll be presenting something. So they'll have not only what they've written or what they produced, but telling their classmates, telling the teachers about that, which is also good language practice. They give students a reason to use their English. So as I said before, if they would be doing, if they were to do these kind of projects anywhere in their own language, they would need to be speaking in order to complete something. So this gets away from the just workbook activities, coursebook activities that might get a little bit repetitive. These are actually working towards something, so it's lifted from the book, and it's much more authentic. They increase subject knowledge. As I mentioned before, most of the topics, the projects that we're going to look at are really topic-based. So in order, for example, if the project is about culture, they may need to learn more about a particular culture or a particular festival. If it's something to do with health and fitness, as we'll look at later, they may need to learn more about the body or about nutrition, for example. So this really increases their subject knowledge outside of just their grammatical knowledge or their vocabulary or their language skills. So projects are really great for that. They help develop life competencies. By life competencies, these are things that go beyond the normal skills that we teach. So as language teachers, we teach reading, writing, listening, speaking, pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar. But these life competencies are things like collaboration, learning to work well together, or it might be critical thinking, learning to be a bit more objective about what you're learning or where you're finding out your knowledge. Creativity, communication, those are the kind of competencies that we need to be building with students in order to prepare them, help them become better learners, more independent learners as they grow up and as they go through the rest of their educational life, and hopefully later as they get out into the real world as well. And projects are great for that. There's lots of opportunities for that. And then they complement course books well. As I mentioned, they're normally topic based, and the course books that you'll be working with, the course books that I'm familiar with, generally each unit is based around a particular topic area. So it could be sports, it could be, for example, hobbies, it could be shopping. So they're often very easy to tie in with course book units, and they can be done at the end of a unit, or they could be done at the end of a term to consolidate everything, or they could be done, for example, over a much longer period, 10 or 15 minutes at the end of every other class, for example, to really consolidate what they're learning in the course book. So there's lots and lots of reasons why we should be doing projects. Let me move to the next slide. There is an important distinction to be made, however, between process and product. When we think of projects, we tend to think of what the students are going to produce. But there are actually two elements that we need to think about. We need to think about the process of doing the project and whatever it is that they're going to be producing. So examples of the product, the kind of things that we're all familiar with, it could be a poster that they're going to make, it could be a story that they're going to write, a presentation that they're going to give about something. It could be a play that they write the script for or the dialogue for, or it could be a fact file, some information about a particular person or topic or place. These are the products, and these are what we typically think about when we think about projects. We think about what's coming out at the end. What do we get to listen to or look at or read from the students? And this is, of course, very, very important. But it's not the only element in that. The other element is process. So this is the actual execution of the project, how they do the project together. And this includes lots of different skills that they need to practice. For example, brainstorming, coming up with ideas together, decision making, deciding what they're going to do, deciding who's going to do what, deciding how they're going to do it. Then the actual doing of the project, whatever kind of language they need to actually complete the project. It could be making something, it could be writing something, helping each other, collaborating basically, and then giving feedback to one another throughout the project and also at the end and to other groups. So these are process skills. And they really, let me just move the slide on. The process leads to the product. And when we think of terms of language input for projects, we also tend to think of the language that's going to come out in the product. So if it's a story, for example, we think about the narrative tenses or linkers to make the story flow well. If it's a fact file, maybe it's more factual writing and so on. We tend to focus on that, and we tend to do a lot of input on that. But to really get the most out of projects, we need to also focus on process and give the children some input to allow them to do the project as much as they can in English. Now that sounds quite complicated, but I'm going to show you that it doesn't need to be. So let's have a look at some examples of process language. For brainstorming, it can be phrases as simple as, I know, I've got a good idea, why don't we? That's a good idea, but. And these are very simple phrases. You can introduce one or two or three. You can introduce them over the course of the year so students become more familiar with them and allow them to come up with ideas together. That's brainstorming language. And it's very useful language in general for English, and also thinking towards the language exams that they might be taking. Decision making, what should we do? What do you prefer? Okay, let's. Again, very simple language, very easy to teach, very easy to practice. And if you give them this language, then they can do part of the project, at least in English. Doing the execution, again, it could be simple things like, let's put this, let's say that, let's make this. If they're making something, very simple imperatives: cut, fold, stick, color, etc. Some process language to enable them to explain stages: first, next, finally. That's good, and oh no, some fun language as well for them to react to one another when they're doing something. So again, very simple language that I think the children are capable of and can be built into the project. Then there's helping one another. Can you help me? I'll help you. Let's do this together. You do X, I can do Y. Thanks. And then finally some feedback. That looks good, well done. That's good, but why don't you? Or that's good, but next time, why don't you? So I hope this is just a selection. It can be made simpler depending on the level, or it can be made more complex depending on the level of the students. And I wouldn't suggest introducing all of this language in one project, but over a year, if you do 2 or 3 projects, there's lots of opportunity to introduce this language and help the students do the project in English as well as just make something together. And I think this is where the key skills come out, and this is where there's a lot of speaking practice, very natural speaking practice that you can get out of projects. So now that I've looked at that, let's have a quick look at how to stage a project. First of all, there should be a lead-in, and these can be activities to get the students interested in the topic area of the project. It could be a video you found on YouTube, a song, a game of some kind, a quiz about a topic. Then there needs to be some preparation. And in the preparation, what happens is the students talk about the topic. Then they do some vocabulary exercises if there's language that they need to learn. And if possible, as far as possible, actually, they study a model of what they need to produce. So, for example, if you want them to make a poster, you need to give them an example of the kind of poster that they're going to make so that they can see clearly what it is they need to do. And they need to look at it and not and study a little bit. So, for example, it might have headings with text. It might also have some pictures. Maybe it has some numbers. They look at it, they study it a bit, and they become familiar with an example that they can follow. If it's a story, you could read a story and look at things like the fact that it has a beginning. Usually there's a problem for the characters and the problem is resolved, and then there's an ending. Maybe a story has dialogue and it has some prose, for example, or a fact file. We're going to look at a fact file in a minute, but as far as possible, there should be a model so that students are clear from the very, very beginning what it is that you're going to ask them to do. Then the bulk of the project, well, possibly the bulk of the project, is the production. So this is when students actually prepare their poster and their story or their fact file. This can be done, this whole project can be done over many lessons. It doesn't have to be done in one lesson. So if you don't have time to dedicate whole lessons to a project, it could be that you set up the project with the lead-in, then you do some work over a period of time with the preparation, and then it just occupies the last 5 minutes or the last 10 minutes of every class or every other class. Once it's up and running, you can say to students, get into your groups, let's continue about the project, and we continue writing the story, making the poster, finding out information, whatever it might be. This is when they actually do that. And through all of these stages, of course, you are reminding them of the language that we looked at earlier. So reminding of the process language, you can put it on the wall, you can give them a little handout to put by their desk, and they can tick off the phrases as they use them. You can have students check each other. Are they using the language? Who's using it more? Who's using it less? It can be quite a competition. You need to remind them of that. And of course, as a teacher, you need to monitor to go around and to help. But you also need to let the students get on with doing the project and not kind of overtake. Because if we want them to be developing skills such as collaboration, helping each other, decision-making, it could be timekeeping, for example, we do have to give them the freedom to make mistakes as well, and to try things out. And it's fine if they don't get everything right the first time. It could be a learning experience. So I think the kind of projects that we're going to look at in a moment, the teacher needs to take a bit of a backseat role. Of course, that you need to be there to help and assist, but you're not dictating, okay, everyone first do this, then do this, then do this. You're letting the students get on with it to a larger extent than you might normally do. Then there comes a presentation stage. Once they've written their story, or they've made their fact file, or they've written their play, they present it. They present it to one another, to their classmates, I mean, if possible to someone else, and of course to the teacher. I find it really works well to, if possible, it's not always possible with timetables, to bring another teacher in. So they're presenting to someone from outside, and that gives it more authenticity. They're not just doing it to their classroom teacher. If it's at the end of the year, it could even be to their parents, if that's a possibility. It is in some places, it's not in others. But this is when they present their project. And while each group is presenting, it's really important that the other groups have a real reason to listen or to watch or to read. So it could be, for example, that they're just going to decide whose story is the funniest or whose story is the scariest, or they're going to decide which fact file was the most interesting, for example, or whose poster is the most creative. All of the other groups have to have a reason for paying attention as well. And it can just be a simple question. And they need to know from the beginning that once we've listened to all the stories, we're going to give an award for the funniest or the most entertaining, the most scary, the scariest, for example. So they have something to do as well. That's an important part of managing the project. Finally, some reflection, some very simple exercises at the end to get students to think about what they did well, how they can improve next time. And this is really important to get them thinking about their own learning. And you can, I'll show you some examples of what I mean by these exercises when we look at the projects, but it is an important stage. It doesn't finish when the presentation's finished. You just need to kind of sum everything up, ask them some reflective questions. Okay, so that probably sounds very abstract. I'm going to show you some examples of projects so you can see how they might work in class. Okay, and the first one is for, it's called Let's Exercise. This is for students with a very basic level. It's really using, the vocabulary is parts of the body, simple imperatives to do with exercise like jump, skip, stretch that you can teach in a very physical way. And they're going to create a fitness routine and then teach it to their classmates. So you have a lead-in, and this can be, these are some examples of what you could do. You can listen or sing along to songs that practice parts of the body. If you go onto YouTube and you just search for simple English songs or ESL songs or songs for English learners, parts of the body, exercise, there are lots and lots of things you can find. You could play Simon Says, which is quite popular, at least with my students, or you could watch an online mini exercise routine for kids. There are lots of those, and there were lots of those produced last year during the pandemic to help kids exercise in their seat when they were sitting at home for a long time, or they're in class and they were not allowed to move because of social distancing. So these are the kinds of things you can do as a lead-in. And that could take one lesson, it could take part of a lesson, for example. And at this stage, you would also tell the students what you're going to do. So they're going to come up with a fitness routine, they're going to teach it to their friends or even to their teachers. And then it's the preparation. So then you would play some games, do some activities to practice vocabulary for parts of the body, the language they need. You might play games and do activities to practice keep fit language. So examples might be jump, stretch, touch your toes, turn around, squat, a bit more difficult. Then you will do an example routine with the teacher as the fitness trainer. Have I got an example there? So here is what I mean by an example. 2 halves, maybe a couple of minutes each. You teach the students, stretch your arms, touch your head 10 times. It's not a very serious exercise routine, and nobody has become that super fit from doing it. But it's a way to introduce the language in a physical way, and it's quite fun and easy to prepare. You can also then learn and practice some motivational phrases. For example, keep going, you can do it, great job, things like that. And you could use those phrases. And then that's the model. Students have seen an example of what they need to do. And then you could do a couple of practice routines. They can do some practice routines in pairs, taking turns to be the fitness trainer, using the motivational phrases. So you would maybe give them the one that's on here and say, okay, in pairs, let's practice. One of you teaches the first half, one of you teaches the second half. It's noisy, but lots of fun. Then the production, they need to create their own fitness routine. They're going to do it in pairs in this case. So it should have 2 halves so that each get to teach 1 half. and it should take about 2 to 3 minutes. You can additionally get them to make a poster for some writing practice where they just write down their fitness routine. And this is quite simple. You can write the phrases on the board. So they simply need to copy the imperatives, the numbers for the number of times, or mix and match, stretch your legs, stretch your arms, touch your shoulders, touch your head. They can copy from the board, and it's very simple writing practice without needing to think in full sentences, for example. And it's nice to put on the wall. Then they practice the routine. They need to practice and learn it together in their pairs, taking turns to be the fitness trainer. One does the first half, one does the second. And then the presentation. This can take place over several lessons because it's too tiring in some cases to have all the students do it at once. But basically they take turns to teach their fitness routine to their classmates. Once all of that is done, the entire group decides together which routines were the most difficult and which were the most fun. So they've got a real reason to not only do the routine, but think about their classmates' work as well. By which time everybody should be exhausted. And then some reflection. So here's an example of how I do reflection in class. Students have some questions that they have to answer individually and some questions that they have to answer together. And it's done with like these sort of smiley faces. So on the left, you can see how well did we work together in this project. The two students will just talk to each other and decide if it was not well, okay, well, or very, very well. And then a question for them to think about individually. How much English did I speak in the project? Lots and lots and lots and lots, lots and lots, some but not much. And then the empty speech bubble is for nothing. So they'll talk about that, they think about that, and then they can copy one of the faces or one of the pairs of faces in their notebook. And then they have a record of how they did for a later project. So if, for example, they put not well for how well did we work together in this project, when you come to do another project, you can remind them of that and ask them, okay, how can we make sure this time we colour in one of the other faces? So very simple things you can do for reflection. If you're teaching from Kids Box, for example, there are nice places where this is quite a nice time to bring this project in. In level 1, in unit 9, there's a story at the end where students will include the phrases, you can do it, come on, and things like that. This fun time, so that's a nice time to bring it in. And they'll also have studied parts of the body by that stage, so that should help. Or it could be our hobbies in Kids Box 2. There's a lot of language there about sports. That's quite an appropriate place to bring that in as well. And you have to do the routines as well. You have to let them teach you, and that can be quite draining but quite fun. My students tried to teach me a TikTok dance a few weeks ago, and I was terrible at it. So there we are. Anyway, next one, let's celebrate. This is for students with a slightly higher level. And in this one, they're going to create a fact file about a festival or a celebration around the world, and then they're going to present it to their classmates. So let's have a look at how this one works. So the Leadin, again, various things you can do. They can talk about their favorite holidays, their favorite celebrations, their favorite festivals. These could be including their birthdays, but it could be things like Christmas, local festivals, other festivals they may have been to, or celebrations that they know about. And another thing you can do here is to, as a lead-in, which I like to do, is a role play, which is a story about a birthday that starts off well and then goes a little bit wrong. And it's like this. You tell the students, or you give them this dialogue. It's your birthday tomorrow. You're going to have a picnic in the park. All your friends are going to be there. I've just seen a question about phrases in the project. I'll answer that at the end, if that's okay. It's your birthday tomorrow. You're going to have a picnic in the park. All your friends are going to be there. They read this mini dialogue. It's my birthday tomorrow. I'm really excited. Me too. What time does the picnic start? At 2 o'clock. It's going to be lots of fun. Lily is bringing pizza. Alex is bringing cola. Sam is bringing music. She's going to be the DJ. Don't forget me. I'm bringing the birthday cake. So a little bit of drama. Drama as in they act it out. Then moving on, you wake up on your birthday, you look out the window and it's raining. It's impossible to have the picnic now. They have this dialogue. Your best friend calls you, happy birthday. It's not happy. We can't have the picnic because it's raining. Lily, Alex and Sam call to say happy birthday, but they're going to stay at home. What are you going to do? I don't really know. My mum and dad say I can go to a restaurant with them, but that's not much fun. Why don't you come to my house? We can play computer games or watch a movie or something. Okay, that's a better idea. See you soon. So they read the next scene. And then you go to your best friend's house. Alex, Sam, Lily are also there with all the food and drink and music, and there's a surprise. You read and continue the conversation. Surprise, we can't have a picnic outside, but we can have a party inside. Wow, I feel so. And from that stage on, you let the students develop the story a little bit so they can finish it off. They write a few lines of dialogue and then they act it out. And then you can decide who has done the better or whose ending was best for the story. And that works as a very nice lead-in. Then they're going to produce a fact file. So they need to look at an example. I've made an example here of the Albuquerque International Balloon Festival. I wasn't able to put an actual photograph on, so I've got 3 cartoon balloons, but I recommend you have a look. It's really beautiful. It's a festival with lots of very colorful hot air balloons that takes place in Albuquerque. The information is there on the fact file. So there are 4 questions. When is it? How long does it last? Where is it? And what happens? It's in October. It lasts 9 days. It's in Albuquerque in the USA. People fly hundreds of colorful hot air balloons, sometimes at night. Some of the balloons have special shapes like animals and cartoon characters. And when all the balloons go up into the sky together, it's very beautiful. So it's a fact file written at a level that they can cope with. They can read, hopefully, quite easily. And also they should be able to produce something of a similar level. And then you would say to them, what does the fact file include? There's the title, the name. It has 4 questions. It has the information and it has some images. So they know what kind of thing they're going to produce. Then they need to choose another festival or celebration that they want to find out more about. These are some examples, but you can come up with others, I'm sure. There's the Harbin Snow and Ice Festival in China, where people build amazing buildings and statues out of snow and ice, and you can walk around inside the buildings. In Tokyo in Japan, there's a very big fireworks festival called the Sumida River Fireworks Festival, which is really, really amazing. The very famous Tomatina Festival in Spain, where everybody throws tomatoes at each other, very messy. And there's something like International Children's Day. So you can give more examples. It could be Halloween, it could be Christmas. For example, it could be New Year, it could be something more typical that they might know about. And they decide together what they're going to do. So then, then students go online to find out what they need to know in order to make their fact file. So they need to, the questions are there for them. They need to know, the questions were, when is it? How long does it last? Where is it? And some very basic information about what happens. If you can direct them towards, I forget the name of it now, there's like a kid's version of Google with very simplified information about things that children can look up and read. And there's also in the languages sections of Wikipedia, there's a simple English section where things are written for language learners. So simplified English, much shorter articles. You could also direct them to in your case, to Russian language sites where they can find that information, and then they need to try to translate the information or put the information into English. That's fine as long as the product is in English. Then they create their fact file, which can be a poster that can go on the wall, or it could be a presentation if they're capable on PowerPoint or something like that. Okay, where are we? Then they take turns to present their fact files and to ask questions about their classmates' fact files. So this could be that they're on the wall and they just stand by their poster and they talk students through it, and the other students are encouraged to ask more questions to find out more information, because maybe not all of the information they would have found has made it onto the fact file. Then once everybody has read or heard about everybody else's fact file and festival, they can decide which festival or which celebration is the most unusual, or which one do they most want to visit. So again, it gives the class something to do together and a reason to pay attention to their classmates' work. Okay, and reflection. So similar before, faces to questions to answer, faces to color in. Here, I've got 2 different ones. How well did we work together to create our fact file? So they can think about how they collaborated, not well, okay, well, very, very well? And how much English did we speak together? And again, it's the same 4 faces. So to get them thinking a little bit more about how they did. And this isn't, they have to understand that this is not, they're not going to be penalized. It's not a mistake. It's just for them to think about how they did in order to do better next time. So there's not a right or wrong answer to this. I find these exercises, when you do them with children the first time, they tend not to be very objective, and they say they did everything very, very well, and they say lots and lots and lots of English. But the more often that you do this, the more objective and honest I find they become. And if you do it with humor as well, it tends to work. Okay, we've got one more project to look at, but I'll just answer the question that came up in the chat, which was, could you tell, please, should we use these phases of the project, lead in, preparation, production, within one lesson or a number of lessons? Personally, I think they should be over a number of lessons. As teachers, we have a lot to get through. We have a lot of the curriculum to get through, a lot of course book material to get through. But I think we can't really afford often, and it depends on circumstances, to do everything in one lesson or everything in 2 lessons. But I think if it's split over a number of lessons, it's also quite motivating for the students. They know that the last 10 minutes or the last 15 minutes of the lesson will be dedicated to the project. As I said, you can maybe set the project up, the lead in, and possibly the preparation in one lesson, and then the actual production, the actual part where they make the fact file or they develop the fitness routine, can be done over several lessons. And then depending on the number of students you have, it might not be possible to do all the presentation in one lesson either. So my recommendation would be to split them over several lessons. The only exception to that is sometimes at the end of term or at the end of the year, you have a few lessons after the final exams or before the holidays start, where you can dedicate to, you have more freedom, at least that's been in my case, and then that can be a nice time to do projects. And in fact, I'm going to show you a project now that works well at the end of the year. Oh, this one with the fact file ties in very well with lots of places in Kids Box. You'll find at the back of the students' books information about different festivals and celebrations. Some examples from Kids Box 3, April Fool's Day, and Mother's Day, and from Kids Box 4, there's Thanksgiving and Pancake Day. So you can use those as well as a lead-in to the topic. Okay, we've got one more, which is for students with a higher level, and this is more substantial, and I call it Let's Welcome the Aliens. And in this one, students write a tourist guide to Earth for an alien visitor, and it works like this. First is the lead-in. These are examples of what you can do. Students brainstorm what they know about the solar system, space, or they could do a quiz. And then one of my favorite activities is they listen to the teacher describe a picture of an alien. So you have a picture of an alien, but you don't show them the picture, they can't see it. They have to just draw what they hear. And then the teacher reveals the picture and they decide which alien or whose alien is the most similar. It's a very silly activity, but it's great for practicing parts of the body and colors and so on. This is an example that I drew of an alien, and you could have that on a piece of paper, describe it. You could extend that, students draw their own aliens and then describe them to their partner. That's good speaking and listening practice for parts of the body, or many, many parts of the body in the case of that alien. Then the student's going to, this one it covers lots of topics, so it's useful to do towards the end of the year, but they're going to do a range of activities to think about nature, animals, famous places on Earth, what people are like, what human beings are like, daily life, jobs, school, free time and entertainment. They don't have to do all of this, but these are some examples, and examples of projects that they could do, activities they could do. They could describe pictures showing, for example, different environments, a desert, the ocean, one of the North or South Poles. They could explore Google Maps a little bit and find famous places. They could look at pictures of a range of people of all ages, races, and able-bodied and disabled people. And then they say what they all have in common. So not what are the differences, but what do we as human beings all have in common? They could look at pictures of people doing different jobs, and they imagine the daily routine of those people, the daily routine of a fireman, of a fisherman, of a doctor. They could even try to imagine the daily routine of a teacher and see what they think your day-to-day life consists of. And then they can talk about things they like about school and why they think school is important. There are probably things they dislike about school, but it's best to focus on the positives. And they compare and talk about their hobbies and interests that they have. So you can do a range of topics. These can be done at different times of the year, tying in with the different units of a course book. And then the students are going to choose 3 or 4 areas to talk about in their tourist guide. So they might want to talk about entertainment, famous places, and sport, for example. Then they're going to write the texts for their guide, and they're going to draw or find images to illustrate their guide, and they're going to put it together as a small booklet or as a set of posters. Then once they've done that, they can read each other's guides and decide which guide gives the most information and which is the most interesting. So they have to imagine an alien visitor is coming to Earth, an alien who knows nothing whatsoever about the planet, doesn't really know how human beings live, doesn't know where is famous to visit or where is the most beautiful places on Earth to visit, doesn't know anything about school on Earth, how children live. So they can really write, this is really good for practicing things like the present simple, for giving routines, daily routines, descriptive language describing nature, for example, and also adjectives for frequency, usually, always, sometimes, and very easy language for describing where things are. So it ties in a lot of language that they're going to need and can reinforce that. And then once they've done that, again, they do some reflection. They answer some questions alone or together, and then again, they copy and color the faces into the notebooks. So 2 simple ones here. How well did we work together in this project? How much English did we speak together? Other questions you can ask them at the end of the project like this one is, for example, what did you learn that you didn't know before? What would you like to learn more about? What did you find easy? What did you find difficult? And they can answer some question stems. For example, they could choose, I liked this project because, I didn't like this project because, or I loved this project because, and they choose one of those. They copy it into the notebook and they complete it with their reasons. So that's the end of the 3 projects. I hope you will try some of those out over many lessons, but to give you an idea of the kind of things that can be done in class and in English with students. Okay, so I don't know if there are any other questions, but I'm happy to answer any if you do have any. I'll just have a look. I know that as teachers, we're usually very busy and we have a lot to get through. So I don't imagine projects that you would be able to do more than one, definitely not more than 1 project like that, I don't think, a term. If you have any extracurricular classes for English, I think they can work well then. And the skills, the process language that we looked at the beginning for brainstorming, decision making, that can be introduced little by little. So maybe, for example, for the first project with the fitness routine, you can just introduce very simple brainstorming language, like let's do this, that's a good idea. Then for the project with the fact file, maybe some decision-making language. And then for the last one, it could be giving feedback. I see that there's a question, do the kids do it at home or together with the teacher during the class? I think that it's better to do it in class with the teacher. The projects, they do need the teacher's guidance and monitoring. Some parts could work as homework. For example, if they're finding out about a celebration to write a fact file, could be they're finding out about it was the firework festival in Japan, for example, or the snow and ice festival. That could be something they can do at home. They can go and find out that information for homework. Or it could be that if they have to write a particular text, so for example, they're writing about sports for the guide for the alien to Earth, they can do the writing at home. But again, it's useful to get them to write together, and then they can talk about what they're writing together, and that's another opportunity for speaking. Another question is, do you correct grammar mistakes while a pupil is speaking when he or she is presenting a project? No, I think at that point, the focus is not on their grammatical accuracy. And I would not correct during presentation. I would definitely not interrupt to correct, because it's not the point of the project. I think it's fine at the end if you've noticed mistakes that the students made, or lots of different students have made. It's fine to have a little 5-10 minutes at the end of the presentations, and you can talk about the mistakes, you can put the mistakes on the board and ask students to correct them. But I think we need to get, for the projects, we need to get away from feeling that there's a right and a wrong answer, and we need to build their confidence in speaking, so not to focus on grammatical errors there. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for inviting me. There's lots of thank yous. So I will leave you with, that's just my thank you and LinkedIn address.